The Origins of Fear by Amber White. Chapter 1. I was 16, but I realized now that I was just a child. The scent of sugary treats and wildflowers mixed in the summer wind. I inhaled, my mouth watering. Tent fabric rustled and snapped, almost drowning out the sounds of bards roaming up and down the aisles of booths. Carnival barkers called out to passers-by, tantalizing them with the drinks and games of chance. My heart pounded against my ribcage, keeping time with the stack of coins in the little bag at my side. Tasha and I raced down the road, weaving between our neighbors, too excited to slow down. "Aren't you two a bit old to run around like little devils?" someone called after us. Tasha giggled. "But it's a carnival!" Jugglers and acrobats, fortune-tellers, and games were everywhere. Little booths with candied and carameled apples drew lines longer than the ones for cold mead and hot wine. Games to test strength, aim, and dexterity made a whole little alley, offering stuffed toys and gold as prizes. We were in love with the magic of it all. People of all races beckoned to us, promising fun and sweets unlike anything we've ever tried. It was a whirlwind of color and merriment. We ran up and down between the booths, happily devouring our treats as we watched others show off in feats of strength. A half-orc man with short light-colored hair and pale pink skin lifted a short bow, drawing back an arrow with ease. He aimed, missing the bullseye on a target by only one ring. The crowd groaned. "Shoot again! You've almost got it," the barker said. He drew another arrow, took a breath, exhaled, and fired again. The gathered spectators cheered as the arrow found its mark, dead center in the target. "Bravo! And here's your prize!" The barker clapped, holding out a stuffed chimera. The half-orc took it, a cocky smile spreading across his face, showing off his short tusks. Tasha dragged me to a game of dagger toss. "All you have to do is hit 3 targets and you win a small painting of a famous hell-spawn singer," the barker said. "Please win it for me," she begged. "You're so good with daggers and she's my favorite." "I know, every time she's in town you insist we see her," I hid a smile. "You want to try your hand?" the elf woman in the booth asked, holding a dagger out on her palm. I handed over a few coins, and she laid out 3 daggers on the table in front of me before stepping aside. The targets were a few feet away. Simple enough. I barely had to aim, and each dagger landed with a heavy thunk in the wood. One on the bullseye, and the 2 others just outside of it. "Yes!" Tasha threw her arms up. The soft lace of her sleeve brushed my face as I dodged away from her hand. She danced on the spot, all flowing fabric and shining skin. A raven cawed and took off from its perch on top of the tent pole. "Hey, careful there," I said, avoiding colliding with her horn this time. "Good one, Fear," a classmate said as they passed. "Thanks." "Here you go," the elven woman said, handing over the painting. That truly was a spectacular show of skill. A few minutes later, our parents and younger sibling finally met us at the main tent to watch a spectacular performance of beautiful women dancing and singing to an enchanting song that we couldn't understand. Magical images of soaring dragons weaved in and out of the audience. Bubbles hovered overhead in streams, like they were floating through water. A layer of fog hovered just above the ground, arcs of light shooting in and out. Someone in a shiny bowler hat and sparkling black and red coat commanded a massive clawed beast to do tricks. At the end of the show, Mother told us to be home by dark as we rushed off with another little sack of coins to play as many games as we could. Dusk draped purple and pink across the sky as we found ourselves at the back of the carnival, facing a lone tent with a sign that read adults only. A sense of curiosity and foreboding seemed to seep out from the fabric, drawing us in. 3 giant ravens stood watch in the dirt, picking at pieces of forgotten meat off to one side. "Don't go in there, kids," someone said, rushing out. Their face turned shade of pale green. They covered their mouth and scampered away to throw up. The spell broke. 2 gloved hands separated the tent flaps and pushed their way out. A tall man in a red jacket with big gold buttons and shining black pants appeared, grinning widely. He gave me the creeps. "Girls!" he bowed. My mouth twitched at being called girl. "Sorry, this tent is for adults only." He looked us over and added, "How old are you?" "I'm 17, Tasha said. I wanted to hit her. We should not be telling unnerving people about ourselves. 17, huh? What a lovely age. He grinned wider still. I felt a little sick. As beautiful and grown-up as you both are, I'm afraid I can't let you in. Wouldn't want your parents upset at us now, would we? Before we could answer, several more hellspawn came out, each one looking disgusted and disturbed. "Go on home. Nothing anyone should see and hear." I looked over and saw our neighbors, Mrs. and Mrs. Stormwind, clutching each other. They reached out and ushered us away from the tent, casting angry, sickened looks behind them at the tall man. The remaining carnival booths were already packing up, getting ready to leave now that the day was done. With our money spent and nothing else to do, Tasha and I reluctantly started heading home. The streets were not yet lit against the encroaching darkness. One particular shadow seemed to follow us, hiding in alleyways and darting between forgotten crates, carriages, and wagons. Something was wrong. Taking my sister's wrist, I walked a little faster. She must have felt it too because she didn't argue. We were 2 streets away from home when I felt a shadow getting closer. That feeling of being watched or being followed, no, hunted, was too strong to ignore, so I stopped and turned. "We know you're there," I called, hoping someone in the surrounding houses could hear me, giving us something resembling backup or help. "Leave now if you know what's good for you." Nothing moved. The streets looked empty. All our neighbors were safe in their homes or lingering somewhere else. Not satisfied that the stranger had stopped, I drew a dagger from my belt, turned back around, and set off again with Tasha right beside me. Thankful our father had insisted that I keep a blade with me at all times. Our house was right there, just a few yards away. The shadows drew closer still. The street lamps flared to life. The magic flames flickered inside of the clear glass. Lights shone from the front windows. Someone was home. I said a silent prayer that my parents were near the door. We reached the gate, my fingers wrapping around the metal latch, still warm from the summer sun. I didn't have time to react. The swish of a cloak was all that I heard before a heavy blow came to my head. Tasha screamed, and the darkness overlooked me. A ringing in my ears drowned out all other sounds, and I fell to the ground, unconscious. I awoke a few minutes later to the sound of many people shouting. They rushed up and down the streets, calling to each other, calling for Tasha. My head pounded. The smell of my mother's perfume wafted delicately into my nose as I lay in the dirt path leading to the front door. "Fear? Fear! Wake up!" Her voice was distant, hazy. I threw up. Darkness surrounded me once more. I woke up again in our living room, my grandmother hovering over me, pressing a damp cloth against my head. "Tasha?" I mumbled. Everything swam around me. A horse neighed outside, galloping off at the urging of its rider. The old sofa underneath me felt warm and hard, still needing new stuffing. My head turned with pain. "Your parents are out looking for her. Do you know who took her? Did they say anything? Was there anything distinct about them?" Grandma whispered. "No, but I think they followed us from the carnival. They were so quiet, I couldn't hear them until they were on us. I saw their shadow follow us for blocks," I said, fighting back the urge to vomit again. Grandma nodded and repeated what I'd said to her, sending stone. My mom's voice came back quickly. "Most of the carnival is already gone. We'll keep looking." They searched for hours all over the village and through the forests. Our best trackers set out to follow a trail of heavy wagon tracks that veered away from the path the rest of the carnival took as my parents came back to talk to the town investigator. "We don't really know who took her or why," the investigator said, standing by the fire. He was a small man, probably a halfling. His tiny feet shuffled on the floorboards, refusing to stand still. "Why?" my mother shouted. "We know why. Those carnival people took her for their freak show." "Ma'am, we don't have any proof of," he faltered. My mother shouted over him. "They were already packing up when the kids were leaving. They had empty cages. They enslaved people from different races to make them perform. How is that not proof enough for you? You heard what the Dry Sun said. The man running the freak show was talking to someone about 2 teens, one with pitch black skin and one with blue-black like the night. It's not a damn coincidence." The halfling wrung his hat in his hands, his eyes moving from parent to the front door. "No one saw the kidnapper take your daughter to anyone involved in the carnival. No one saw the kidnapper at all. If your other daughter could give us a description." "Fear isn't our daughter. They are neither male nor female," my father said, annoyed. "Oh, my apologies," he squeaked. Still, all eyes turned to me, head throbbing. I sat up. Bile rose in my throat. I didn't see them. I noticed someone following us from the carnival, and when we got to the gate, I heard their cloak swish just before they hit me on the head. Grandma's warm hands gripped my fingers, pulling them into her lap. I looked down, realizing that I had carved another shallow gash into my muscled forearm with my nails, the scabs of older ones scratched off. "I heard Tasha screamed and rushed out," Father said. The entire neighborhood chased after them, but we lost them near the edge of the village, close to what's left of the carnival. The investigator left soon after, giving a vague half-promise of following leads and looking for Tasha, but told us not to get our hopes up. He clearly didn't know our family. Mother was the best exterminator in the area, always ready and willing to kill any menace or pest, no matter if it was forests, sewers, or the walls and basements of buildings. That's how my parents met. My father was an exterminator from a neighboring village on the hunt for the same group of spiders Mother was after. They killed them together and got married not long after. I guess you could find love anywhere. Mother quit when she found out that she was pregnant with Tasha, deciding it was too dangerous to keep hunting fearsome beasts with a child on the way. Instead, she went to work for her mother as a tailor, and I was born a year after that. Father kept up as an exterminator and had been training me to do the same. Our little sibling, Criella, also non-binary and a bit different, was already training to be an exterminator too, preferring it to the needlework or being stuck in the tailor's store. We were close friends to skilled trackers who loved Tasha dearly. We couldn't sit by while my sister was out there somewhere experiencing the gods only knew what at the hands of monsters. It wasn't in our nature. No, blood was our nature. Death was our purview. It took 3 months to track down the man who owned the freak show. He moved around often, bouncing from carnival to carnival, sometimes setting up shows by himself, sometimes hiding in the safety of the caravans and other traveling performers. Grandma stayed home with Criella while we hunted the bastard down. Each day was an agonizing wait, with me growing more frustrated. But then, it was finally time. I wrapped my cloak more securely around myself against the early autumn chill as I lurked in the shadows of some large bushes a quarter mile from the side of a small convoy of wagons, my parents beside me. Roaring fire sprang up along the path as the show's employees and other performers set up camp for the evening, and the smell of cooking meat drifted through the evening air. My stomach gurgled. We hadn't been starving out on the road, but I was used to eating better. I noticed a bird sat on a bench over my head, watching silently from the shadows. "You remember the plan?" Father whispered in my ear. "We know it's a lot. You don't have to do this." I nodded. "Wait for the distraction, get in, get Tasha out, kill anyone who tries to stop me." I whispered back. "I can handle it. It should be me who does it." Both of my parents squeezed my hands and crept off to the end of the caravan, where the largest fire crackled merrily. Shouting, the clashing of swords, people up and down the caravan rushed to help their friends as my family and our friends fought with reckless abandon. Moving swiftly, I made my way to the second wagon from the lead, where one tracker said my sister was being kept. Quiet as a snake, I slithered inside, narrowly avoiding tripping over a sleeping guard's legs. I hesitated, not quite ready to do anything. He snored and shifted, sending my heart into a frenzied beat. It has to be now. It's the only way, I thought. Without further delay, I slit his throat. Blood splurted across the wood, splashing against me and the bars of the cage. I licked my lips. It was warm and metallic. It tasted good. The air just inside the cage beside me shimmered with magic. As the dying guard gurgled and choked, barely able to move, I tapped between the bars with my dagger. Nothing happened. The pile of rags inside stirred, revealing dark hair falling into a tangled mess around two long horns curving in a circle like a ram's. "Tasha," I breathed, falling to my knees to get a better look. Reaching through the bars, my arm felt heavy, like pushing through wet sand. "Tasha?" Tasha sat up slowly. She looked ill. Her normal shiny, full black hair was now dull and thin, hanging limp and matted around her face. Her once glittered black eyes now looked completely lifeless. She was an onyx beauty all of my life. Now, she looked dead. Her frail arms lifted with great effort and touched my hand. She mouthed something, but no sound came out. The magic in the cage blocked it. Rapidly searching the pockets, pouches, and belts of the dead guard for a set of keys, I found a ring of them and jammed one into the lock. It clicked, the heavy metal falling to the wagon floor. The cage door swinging open. She could barely stand. Clinging to each other, I helped my sister down and into the trees to meet one of our family friends who stayed back to help protect Tasha once we got her. The fighting hadn't stopped, and I was about to rush to our parents when I saw them. The sneaky, conniving asshole who had taken my sister. I knew it was them. I could feel it in the way they slunk around in the shadows of the first wagon, watching the fight at the other end. "I can't let him live," I thought, striding forward. They didn't seem to notice me until the blade of my dagger sank into their stomach up to the hilt, mere inches away. I could see the cold, masculine face twist in surprise and pain as he looked down at the blade and then up at me, though I was shorter than himself. Dragging it out of his flesh, he struck his face with his back of his hand, groaning and clutching his stomach. Blood dripped from my mouth, and I laughed. Injuring an angry hellspawn was the last thing anyone should ever do. With a flick of my wrist, his whole body was engulfed in flames, an ability handed down through infernal bloodlines like mine. He screamed, tried to take a step forward, and promptly fell. The overwhelming scent of burnt flesh and smoke came in a sudden wave that made me cough and gag. "What?" said a familiar voice. The freak show owner stumbled down, half-dressed, from the back of his wagon and stared open-mouthed at what was left of his lackeys lying dead and burning on the dirt before him. "You little demon bitch! What did you do?" Moving quickly, I picked up a dagger from the kidnapper's belt and threw it at him. It sank deep into the show owner's shoulder and he fainted. Footsteps, slow and careful, crept toward us. I picked up my own dagger from the dirt where it had hidden, still covered in blood, and hid it, ready to attack whoever was sneaking closer. "Fear?" My mother's voice called softly. She looked around, surprised, as I clambered back out from under the wagon and stood to meet her. "Did you do all of this?" I nodded. "He needs to pay," I said, looking over at the owner. My voice was cold, tight. I wanted to scream loud enough to shake the birds from the trees. My hand trembled. "Here," she said, taking the dagger from me and sliding it back into its sheath. "Light a match. Stand where you stood and throw it toward that one." She nodded toward the kidnapper. "He'll go to prison for murder." "That's not good enough!" Anger welled inside of me, making my voice crack. "We have to kill him! You didn't see what he did to Tasha. He deserves to die!" She took my shoulders and looked me square in the eyes, the bright glint in hers keeping my focus, the way they always did. "Fear. I know how you feel. I want him dead too. But the prison here is one of the worst in the kingdom. He'll suffer for a long time before he dies. He will know pain before the end. You've done enough." "Fine," I said. Push down the anger. "Don't let it make you act rash. Don't let it control you." "How is Tasha? Did you get her out safely?" "She's alive, but you need to see her." The fighting died down. Every freak show employee lay dead in the dirt. Someone in our group convinced the other travelers to claim the employees attacked them. It was simply self-defense. Gold helped them to remember that little story. Showing them the half-dead captive stashed away in the wagons cemented it in their minds. I walked with Mother and Father to the rendezvous point, silent and still shaking. Tasha still lay bundled in a cloak and blankets on the leaf-strewn earth, completely unaware of what was going on around her. Our parents cried, holding a shaking, barely conscious Tasha between them. I stood there awkwardly before they pulled me down to join their strange little hug. My arms wrapped around my sister's waist. I could feel every bone in her now, too small frame. Burying my face in her shriveled shoulder, I cried too. She used to be warm and soft, delicate but strong. Now the bones in her shoulders pressed uncomfortably against my cheek. Her spine and ribs felt hard under the too thin skin. My insides twisted violently. She didn't feel like my sister. This wasn't my best friend shivering in my arms. "Give her this," someone said, holding our parents a potion. They tipped it gently into her mouth. She choked, but swallowed most of it. Her eyelids fluttered rapidly. Mother?" she said. "Father?" Her voice was faint, cracking and raw from screaming. "We're here, baby. It's okay. You're safe," Mother said. Tasha struggled, fighting against me. I let her go, not wanting to hurt her. No, she mumbled. "It's okay," I said. "No one is going to hurt you again." She twisted, looking at me with wild eyes. It took her a long while for her to recognize my face. When she finally did, tears streamed down her sunken cheeks. "We have to leave. People are coming. We can't be seen here," our neighbor said, eyes scanning the tree line. Everything set, shouts of travelers in the distance coming in fast, we took off deeper into the trees to find the rest of our group and get to a safe area where our horses stood waiting. We moved through the night, refusing to stop for anything. Tasha slept in Father's arms, exhausted. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her wheezing breath catching every so often. My sister was never the same. She stayed gaunt, only willing to eat small amounts of soft food. She was barely able to communicate, refusing to talk unless it was to say our names or the words no. If anyone but family tried to touch her, she would freak out, screaming or thrashing until she or they were covered in blood and bruises. On good days, she would sing softly to herself, the words unrecognizable, but the tune unmistakably her favorite from the musical plays that we would sneak into during our youth. On bad days, she twitched and screamed, pulling her hair out and flailing at anyone who would come too close. My once ultra-girly sister was now a shell of her former self who looked too much like me and Criella. We wore trousers and hid our feminine appearances because it was who we were. Tasha seemed afraid of showing her curves and feminine features now. She kept her hair short and hard to grab. Her loose clothes looked even bigger on her tiny frame. The former star of the family, of the village, shrank from social interactions. Adults now looked at her with pity. Children whispered about her. I got into more than one fight after school with anyone stupid enough to say something in front of me. People started avoiding us. Her best friends came around less and less often. No one wanted to deal with her, and a lot of them were terrified of saying the wrong thing if there was a chance I could hear it. At least our parents still got customers. Most people in the village hired them, unable to think of another way to support our family in our trying time. A gaggle of old ladies brought us warm food once a week, tisking about my violent outbursts, insisting that I should be more helpful. Never mind the fact that I was the one who got up at all hours of the night to check on Tasha when she cried and screamed. I dropped out of school to work, the extra money going to pay healers to help her. I also didn't want to face my classmates anymore. I hated their stares and whispers, and I'm sure they hated me for punching so many of them until they were bloody and crying. I couldn't forgive myself for not being able to protect Tasha, so I found an apprenticeship at the local thieves guild and trained for the next year to improve my skills in stealth, lockpicking, and aim with blades and bows. With their help, no one was going to get the drop on me again. I was going to learn to defend her if it was the only thing that I did with my life. And though I would never admit it to anyone, I relished the memory of watching those people die. My fingers itched to slay the people who said anything negative about my family, but I stayed my hands, taking calm breaths instead. Criella suffered a great deal over the year, unable to spend time with her like they used to. Or with me, for that matter. Their classmates gave them dirty looks, calling them names and making fun of their crazy sister and violent sibling. While I still worked with Father and helped train Criella, I became overbearing, insisting they learn as much as possible about stealthing, fighting, and hunting. They took it all in stride, but I could tell something beneath the surface was cracking. Part of me didn't care. Part of me hated myself for everything that I had done to our family. We never talked about it, or why I was pushing them so hard to be the best. We had to help care for our sister, limiting our free time, and I was taking away what was left of their childhood with my training. But it had to happen. If I couldn't be around her all the time, Criella had to be able to protect themselves and our family, no matter the circumstances. The scars on my arms rapidly grew in number. One night, after hours of training and ridding someone's house of the nest of disgusting rats with Criella, I collapsed onto bed and fell into a deep sleep. A palace of black glass loomed above me, sharp and cold. Shards of it jutted out in all directions from the blood-red crystalline base. Harsh angles formed jagged peaks in a misty backdrop. Reflections of humanoid figures glided in and out of view, never staying long enough to be identified. I barely had time to take it all in, moving my foot forward in a hesitant step when my vision blurred, the world rushing past me in a flurry of shadows, and suddenly I found myself inside. Firelight gleamed on the floor and walls, casting an eerie glow that was both blue and orange on the smooth, inky surfaces. "Hello?" I called. The caw of ravens answered back. They turned to screams and wails of anguish, the sound of people burning alive, of a woman being tortured. Hazy, ill-formed images of a hunched figure in a cage blinked across the glass, transparent and fleeting. Sticks prodded at it, a hand reaching in to pull its hair. She screamed, beating at the bars with bruised fists. Cuts. littering her arms and face, aiding a splash of color to her pitch-black skin. I fell to my knees and covered my ears in pain. The screams were too loud. The roaring flames crackled all around me. Just when I thought my head would explode from the sound, it stopped. Wisps of smoke and shadow rose around me and gathered into a swirling form of a tall figure in a huge flowing cloak of flapping wings. They fluttered around, unsettled. The maddening sensation of being watched from every angle crept under my skin. "Child," the person croaked in a sound like a raven, only deeper. "You have great sorrow." "Who are you?" I asked, trembling. I looked on in awe as Tasha's face peered out from under the hood, gentle and youthful at first, then bubbling and shifting to form the gaunt, haunted look that I knew too well. The face changed. Criella gazed down at me with cold indifference. It changed again, this time taking on the death mask of the guard I killed. Red splashed across his form. Then the kidnapper, angry welts blistering into peeling burn scars, his skin melting and reforming as I watched in a mixture of revulsion and fascination. "I am the goddess of death," they said, becoming a little more solid, their face changing once again, this time to a shimmering bird mask. The faint outline of enormous raven wings shined behind her on the glass. "And if you agree, I will be your patron." "My patron?" I asked, sitting up. Somehow, as freaky as this all was, I was no longer afraid. "I can teach you things. I have the power to give you abilities that will make you unbeatable. No one would threaten your loved ones again. You could sate the bloodlust you try to hide and be praised for it," she said. "I have seen what is in your heart, and I know you long to kill again. Slaying beasts is not enough. You want to punish those who hurt the innocent. I will help you do that." My heart thudded against my ribs, my breath caught in my throat. "What do you want in return?" I asked. Could it really happen? Is all of this real? Is she telling the truth? "Of course I am telling the truth, dear one. All I ask for is memories. I want the memories of every living thing you kill," she said, her voice swelling. "Pledge this to me. Let me take them at the moment of your victim's death, and I will give you the powers you never dreamed possible. I can help your sister, too. I can take away the memories that haunt her. Death, revenge, keeping my family safe, bringing back Tasha's sanity." My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities until only one thought remained. "I pledge myself to you," I whispered, then louder. "I am your servant. Teach me and I will bring you oceans of memories." A deep, cawing laughter filled the room. "Then you shall learn, child. Leave your home and set out into the world. Your skills will come in time." I woke to early morning sunlight peeking through the curtains. Squinting, I shielded my eyes and rose to pack a bag. I would wait only long enough to write a few letters that explained to my parents that I was called by a real goddess to become her servant and rid the world of evil. They would understand. They would explain to my grandmother and siblings, still sound asleep, why I wasn't there. I could no longer be a child.